At least one person was killed and more than a dozen others were injured as Russia continues to strike Ukrainian civilian and energy infrastructure.
British police say one of the casualties in Thursday's terrorist attack on a synagogue in Manchester was accidentally shot by a police officer.
Flights in Munich airport were grounded for close to 7 hours after officials cited unknown drones violating its airspace.
Widespread outrage and protests erupted across the globe after Israel intercepted the Gaza aid flotilla.
At least one person was killed and 16 others were injured in Russian attacks in Ukraine over the past 24 hours. Ukraine's Air Force says the Kremlin launched over 380 Iranian-made Shahed attack and decoy drones, as well as 35 missiles of various types. They noted that they were able to successfully intercept just over 300 drones and 17 missiles aerially. The Air Force says, however, that 78 drones and 18 missiles did strike their targets on the ground. The attacks targeted multiple cities in the east, north, and south of the country. One person was killed in Donetsk in the eastern Donbass region, the flashpoint frontline since Russia waged its all-out war. In the south, 5 people were injured in Kherson and 2 others in Zaporizhia after the Kremlin targeted residential houses and apartment buildings. The northeastern Kharkiv region sustained the heaviest blow as over a dozen missiles and a flurry of drones pummeled various parts of the region. Local officials say at least 2 were injured and civilian homes and critical infrastructure sustained serious damage. Ukrainian energy giant Naftogaz says a number of its facilities in Kharkiv and the adjacent Poltava regions were struck. Energy officials say the attacks were the most extensive on the country since Moscow launched its invasion well into its 4th year.
British police say one of the casualties in Thursday's terrorist attack on a synagogue in Manchester, northwest England, was accidentally shot by a police officer as worshippers tried to stop the attacker from entering the building. 2 people were killed and at least 3 were hurt in the attack at the Hayden Park Hebrew Congregation Synagogue on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish year. Greater Manchester Police said that one of the hospitalized had accidentally been shot by police. The attacker, a 35-year-old British citizen of Syrian descent, was wearing what appeared to be an explosives vest before being shot dead by police. British authorities say 3 people suspected of being involved in the attack have been detained but have not been charged. Police say they are still working to determine the motive behind the attack, but according to the Community Security Trust, which monitors hate crimes in the UK, anti-Semitic incidents in the UK have risen following Israel's ongoing military campaign in Gaza.
Munich airport suspended flights late on Thursday night after several drones were sighted in its airspace. Flights were grounded from 10 p.m. local time on Thursday and, according to airport officials, resumed around 5 a.m. on Friday. The closure affected more than 3,000 passengers at the airport after 17 flights were delayed and barred from taking off. 15 incoming flights were also affected by the closure, but officials say they were safely diverted to nearby airports in Stuttgart, Frankfurt, and Vienna. The incident marks the latest in a string of unknown drone overflights in European Union countries' airspace. Last week, Denmark was forced to close 5 of its airports, including the largest and busiest in Copenhagen, after unidentified drones violated its airspace. Airspace violations were also reported in Romania and Estonia. It's not yet clear who's behind most of the flyovers prior to this latest incident, but European officials suspect Russia is responsible and accuse them of testing European borders.
European leaders wrapped up 2 days of summits in Copenhagen, dominated by Hungary's Viktor Orban, whose vetoes stalled efforts to back Ukraine. The Hungarian Prime Minister rejected a €140 billion plan for Kyiv, funded by frozen Russian assets, despite Belgium's appeals for solidarity.
Yes, we have problems with Hungary. We can speak about it because Viktor Orban has elections, and I think it's not smart. because he has election. That's why he's blocking big 40 million nation on their way to EU. Big and strong nation. Because, by the way, Russia began this war because our will and our choice to go directly to Europe. Because we feel the same and share the same values with all other European countries.
Orban also refused to lift his veto on Ukraine's EU membership bid, also blocking Moldova's progress. In response, Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen called for the EU to maintain its unanimity.
No, I think we have to stick to strategy, and enlargement of the European Union is a part of our strategy, and it's a question for the entire European Union and actually the entire European continent. And we have to build as strong Europe as possible, which in my world means enlarge the European Union. There is European unity because we are 26 countries agreeing that Ukraine, Moldova and other countries should join us. By the way, they're doing quite an amazing job, even though they are at war. So no, I think we have to stick to strategy. And I will not allow one country, and I will certainly not allow Viktor Orban to take decisions upon the entire European future.
The deadlock leaves Kyiv's accession frozen and complicates Europe's financial support, with fresh sanction talks also facing potential vetoes. For now, EU leaders pledged to keep talks moving with Ukraine, despite Orban's defiance threatening to fracture unity.
It's been days of non-stop rallies here in Italy, including on Wednesday and Thursday, when thousands took to the streets in response to the flotilla blockade and the arrest of several Italian activists. Italy's main union, CGIL, which had announced a strike, saying that they would take to the streets if the flotilla were blocked, said that they've called this general strike to, quote, defend the rights of those Italian citizens who have been unlawfully detained and whose constitutional rights have been violated. I'm currently standing here in Piazza dei Cinquecento, nearby Rome's main railway station, which has been redubbed Piazza Gaza, Gaza Square, by the protest organizers who have turned this place into the permanent camp. And in fact, this place has become, if you will, the hotspot of these demonstrations. Now, this is the second general strike in less than 2 weeks that is going to disrupt both the private and public sectors in the next 24 hours. Education, logistics, transport will also be heavily affected, although some essential services will still be running. Now, next to union representatives, students and representatives of pro-Palestinian groups have also joined the rally today here in Rome. It's been estimated that thousands of people have joined the event today. They're mainly demanding that the government protect the flotilla and its members, and that the government take a firm stance against Israel's military operations in Gaza. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni says that these protests have been organized mainly to protest against the government rather than in support of Gaza. Another big rally is planned here in the Italian capital on Saturday. Giorgio Orlandi for Euronews in Rome.
Global outrage erupted after Israel intercepted the Gaza aid flotilla aimed at breaking the long-standing Israeli blockade and bringing humanitarian aid to the war-ravaged enclave. Israel's foreign ministry dismissed the mission as provocation, saying that various countries had offered to deliver the aid the boats were carrying. Israel has continuously faced widespread criticism on how much aid it lets into Gaza and how it distributes it. In Paris, a protest against the French government and budget cuts transitioned into a demonstration for Gaza, with more than 1,000 protesters gathering in Place de la République.
Ces militants et militantes aient été arrêtés dans les eaux internationales. C'est totalement illégal du point de vue du droit international.
Demonstrations were also held in several cities in Italy. In Milan, 20,000 people marched through the city centre, and in Rome, at least 10,000 people gathered at the Colosseum. The protesters demanded the release of the Italian activists who were part of the flotilla and urged the government to place more pressure onto Israel.
Praticamente un popolo che manifesta per un diritto alla vita di bambini, di donne che tutti i giorni muoiono massacrati sotto le macerie, perché la guerra si fa con due eserciti. Lì c'è un esercito solo e c'è della gente affamata che scappa dalle bombe. Cioè, chiamare guerra a sta cosa è aberrante.
Protests also took place in other major cities in Europe, including in Barcelona, Geneva, Brussels, Istanbul and London, as well as worldwide in Sydney, Buenos Aires, Mexico City, New York and Kuala Lumpur.
Europe's steel industry has said its survival is at stake, warning of mass layoffs unless Brussels introduces urgent protection against US tariffs and Chinese imports. German union IG Metall says companies such as ThyssenKrupp face thousands of job cuts. The sector supports around 2.5 million workers across the European Union. The European Commission's Vice President convened an emergency summit with unions and industry leaders after US President Donald Trump imposed up to 50% tariffs on steel. Surplus from China is also flooding the market and driving down prices. The Commission says it will propose fresh protective measures at next week's European Parliament session in Strasbourg.